Are you stuck doing what's urgent? Are you stuck doing what's important? Can you not figure out the two? Coming up next here on the Grow with Tim podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another great episode. I already know it's going to be great because we are talking about organizing your thoughts, your times, your patterns. One of the things that you always talk about, Tim, is effectiveness, efficiency. We're kind of getting into that in a way with our matrix that we're going to put everybody through here in a second.
That's right. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. A lot of our listeners are familiar with this already. It's so named because the former president, Dwight Eisenhower, was said to have figured out how to allocate his time as he led the country by organizing it into 4 quadrants. So we're going to talk about those. They were later popularized by Stephen Covey.
Right.
So you've heard of Stephen Covey's time management matrix. You've heard of the Eisenhower Matrix or the 4 quadrants. It's all the same concept. We're going to call it the Eisenhower Matrix today because I think that's where it came from. Talking about how do you actually do the things that matter, the things that are important, not necessarily just the things that are screaming for your attention.
Right. And there's so many things screaming for everybody's attention out there, especially those high-octane entrepreneurs that we're usually talking to who aspire to be presidents one day. So first, a few trivia items about Dwight D. Eisenhower. What you got?
Trivia. Oh, I did not come prepared for this. I think Dwight is the guy that is known for several quotable statements, right? Isn't he the one that says it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog, right? Which works well for me because I'm at like 5'9", usually one of the smallest people in a room full of men at least, right? And so
do you normally have to fight a lot, or do you have a lot of
day.
Okay. All right.
So for some reason, Will this morning turned on the camera and then asked me, what would I do if a dog attacked me? And I had to. He's asking what kind of a punch am I going to throw? I don't know. Aren't they all the same? Like I've never
not absolutely not. They are maybe split into like quadrants here.
Yeah, right.
We've got punches that are important but not urgent right now. It may become urgent if we don't throw the right punch. Well, at the same token, I don't know a thing about Eisenhower as well. Of course, he was General Eisenhower. That's kind of what I know. And I've heard the only thing I'll say about him before we get into what the effectiveness of his matrix did is he apparently was actually America's first black president. Like one of his paternal grandparents was actually African-American, which he never, of course, at that time. He never acknowledged in the 30s, 40s, 50s when he was doing his dirty work. Yeah, something crazy. Like
interesting.
But anyway, so tell us in the comments. We don't know. Okay, so Tim, we have got this matrices here. Most people know that this matrix came from Stephen Covey. Once again, I didn't know it came from Eisenhower. Apparently, he was running the country with information like this. So help us understand.
So first of all,
where do we place this?
Yeah, so we got to set up this matrix for those of you that have not seen it before. And this is going to be hard to do in an audio format. So
we'll figure it out, everybody. Yeah, you can watch us, of course, in different places. So if you're just listening, get to the podcast.
Look at the show notes. You'll see the video. We'll try to visualize this for you. So 4 quadrants. So the top row, right, is going to be things that are important. Bottom row is going to be things that are less important. Okay. Right. All right. So we got 2 rows. Importance on top. Then you've got the first column is going to be all of your things that are urgent, that are screaming for your attention right now. Okay. And the second column is going to be the things that are not so urgent. Right. They're lower priority, not in the sense of what you should do, but they don't seem to be so urgent.
Yeah, they're just not. They're not screaming. Right? It's more of a whisper.
So you end up with a grid, right, of 4 boxes, 2 by 2, and the top row is the important things. The bottom row is unimportant. First column is the urgent things. The second column is the unimportant. And so if you were to number those, your first box is going to be the things that are important and urgent.
So first box is top left.
Yeah.
Top left.
Top left. So the things that are important and urgent, these are going to be, there's all kinds of things, right? The school nurse calls and says, your daughter's sick and you need to come pick her up, right? Yeah. You don't really have a choice to delay that for a day or two. You got to do it right away. Your daughter hopefully is important.
A day or 2.
Important,
right.
This
you got to go do that now. Yes.
Your website is down. And it's how you generate sales for your company. Well, that's pretty urgent and it's pretty important, right? Yep. All right. Box number 2, right next to it on the top still. Mm-hmm. These are things that are important, but they're not necessarily urgent.
Right.
This is strategic planning. This is thinking about the future of your company. It's
your diet,
making investments. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Your diet, your health, working out. Working out, look, is not urgent. If I don't go and work out this morning, nothing bad is going to happen immediately. But over time, that's an important thing that's going to keep me out of the doctor's office. It's going to prevent some health crises. Right.
Right.
Okay. So box number 2 is really important. We're going to talk about what to do with all these boxes in a minute. But for now, I just want you to get the picture. So box number 1, top left, urgent and important. Box number 2 is important but not urgent.
Mm-hmm.
Now we drop down to the second row.
Okay.
Box number 3, back to the left. It is not particularly important, but it is urgent.
Yes.
Okay, so
I'm scared of this box.
Yeah, that's where too many of us spend time here. So these are unscheduled interruptions, right? So somebody calls you and asks you a question, you weren't planning to do that. These are in urgent things like you've got to book travel, right? You got to be in Washington, D.C. next week, and you got to book your plane ticket and get your ground transportation figured out in your hotel and whatever, but that's not important. Like anybody can do that, right? So this is a box sneak preview, right? This is a box that we're going to delegate a lot of.
Okay.
All right. And then finally, box number 4 is neither important nor urgent. Mm-hmm. And that's the stuff that you just got to dump. You just got to get rid of.
Yep.
Maybe a few of those things should be automated. A few of those things maybe can get delegated, but probably you just need to eliminate that stuff. Right. Okay. So there are the 4 boxes. Your urgent and important boxes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Box number 1, you just got to do, and you've got to do it soon because it's urgent and it's important. But here's the thing. Your degree of success is going to be largely determined by how you allocate time across these 4 boxes.
Okay, because there's a finite amount of time, and we're trying to say that the control is everything fits into one of these 4.
Yep.
So how we spend our time figuring this out, hopefully in advance, so we're a little preview again, foreshadowing, is going to determine all the difference in our growth, our effectiveness, our income, our team, our health, everything.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. And unfortunately, most of us are ruled by the tyranny of the urgent.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
The tyranny of the urgent, you're constantly putting out one fire, running to the next. You're responding to this phone call. You're answering this email. It feels like you're always behind. You're always running late. And you're ruled by the tyranny of the urgent, and you're never actually getting the important things done. Now, it may seem like you're going to say, well, yeah, I'm just too busy to do those important things. I can't take a day to do strategic planning. What, are you crazy? I got a business to run.
Right.
The problem is that there's actually a relationship between these two. It's not just that we want to stop doing these less important things because we want to do the important things. If you do the important things, you'll actually find that you can prevent a lot of those urgent crises.
Right. Okay.
So we're going to talk about that at length here in a few minutes. But there is a relationship, and your degree of success is largely determined by how you allocate your time. So let's figure out how to spend more time in box number 2, which is important, but not necessarily urgent.
Okay, very good. So we think that, so what are you saying, Tim, that box number 2 is where we should spend most of our time, or the most strategic time should be there, or?
So it depends on the life cycle of your business.
Okay.
If you don't have a team or you don't have much of a team yet, you may spend a lot of time in boxes 1 and 2.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit of time in box 3 even, which is box 3, just to remind you, is the important, it's the urgent but not important stuff.
Right.
So, but as you progress and as you build out a team and build a company and you are becoming more and more strategic, you're functioning at an executive level or even a board member, you got to have all your time spent in box number 2. Somebody like Jeff Bezos, right? Even when he was CEO, now he's chairman of the board or whatever at Amazon, but even when he was CEO, he didn't spend any time in box numbers 1 or 3 or 4.
Okay.
Right? When he would get on a call, he's talking about 15 and 20 years. I heard a story about Bezos. One of his college buddies or whatever called him up after an earnings call, right? You're a publicly traded company. He's announcing earnings, and this buddy called him up and said, "Hey man, congratulations on a great earnings call. Like you killed it. You beat all the analyst expectations for what your company was going to earn." And Bezos is like, "Well, yeah, thanks. That's it's nice of you to say that, but this earnings call today was baked in 16 quarters ago."
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Right.
16 quarters ago, 4 years ago, the decisions that we were making 4 years ago actually made this quarter's call what it was.
Right.
And so it wasn't like congratulations on, you had a really great quarter.
Yeah.
It was a great 4 years that led up to this quarter.
We had a premeditated way of going about our decisions to get us to where we really wanted to go. Yeah. And that's what box 2 is all about.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you is, how do you decide, or how should one decide? Or maybe, specifically, I'm going to ask you, how do we batch our time? When I started to learn about, hey, there are certain things that you basically guarantee and schedule you're going to put in, and then you avoid other things. That's how you get stuff done.
Yeah.
Now, what to think about, you're going to help us with that too. But first off, it was batching. Look, you've got to spend strategic time just doing the important and eliminating everything else, at least mentally when you're sitting at your desk or on a call.
You got it. Prioritizing and batching time is brilliant. So trying to get the same types of activities all grouped together, you just have a lot fewer switching costs, right? It's death by 1,000 cuts if you're constantly switching from one thing to the next to the next. But then prioritizing this box number 2, stuff that isn't urgent but is important. So I'll give you an example. Next Friday, actually even before this podcast comes out, I've got the whole day blocked off for strategic planning. I'm going to get out of town. I'm not going to have a laptop. Well, I'll probably have a laptop just for
this
crisis.
Is just you?
Just me in this case, because what I'm doing on this day is strategic planning for Tim Joyner Incorporated, right? For all the stuff I'm involved in.
So is it just you? Is it you and the family? Is it you and your assistant?
In this case, it's just me.
Okay.
The next week,
I've
actually am taking a leadership team from one of the companies that I'm involved in, and there are going to be 6 of us that are going to Asheville. We're going to a nice hotel, and we're going to camp out for parts of 3 days. And it's going to be strategic planning for 2023 with the whole team. That is not urgent. And in fact, it's very expensive because I'm renting, I think, 6 hotel rooms in a nice space. It's not just the hotel and the travel that's the expense. It's the time, right? I've got 6 senior people, very valuable, really busy people. I'm going to take them completely out of day-to-day operations for basically 3 days, 2.5 days. And it's very expensive and it's not urgent, but it is so important. And the work that we do in that retreat is going to prevent a lot of crises in 2023. It's going to multiply what otherwise would be, I hope, a successful year, but it's going to make it many times more successful. It's going to be really powerful, but it's a classic number 2. And if we waited to have time for that, if we waited until we got all the urgent things fixed, if we waited until we put all the fires out, we'd never do it. So we're just going to plan it. We're going to shut off our phones. We're going to turn on autoresponders, and we're going to have 2.5 days in the mountains of North Carolina without thinking about operational stuff. We're going to force ourselves to spend time in box number 2, and I'll report back to you. But I anticipate it's going to be a very valuable activity.
Well, here's the question that I have then. How does one or a team know whether or not it is valuable? Because if we're potentially looking out for far, there can be a lot of anxiety going, man, is this really going to get us to where we want to go? Man, I'm still dropping the ball on urgent, important things right now. You know, how do people or how do you yourself worry about that? So I'm sure things can come up and be urgent. So how do we make sure we can live through that?
So we'll talk through each box here in a minute, but the short version is you've sort of got to take it by faith until you've experienced it. Once you've experienced it, you'll never go back. Because every time you deal with a crisis, make a note in box number 2, a new to do in box number 2, the important but not the urgent thing. Every time you have a crisis, you say, what can I do differently to make sure I never have to solve this crisis again? Right. I never experience this again.
Right.
And that kind of planning work, that kind of investing work, that kind of preventative maintenance work is never urgent until it blows up in your face.
Right.
But if you do that systematically and rigorously again and again and again, you end up virtually eliminating the crises. Not going to eliminate all of them. You're still, you're going to get in a car wreck that nobody saw coming. You couldn't have prevented it, right? And it's going to put you in the hospital for 4 days or 4 months or whatever. It's not that you can control everything, but you can control quite a bit. And it's that box number 2 that's going to allow you to prevent a lot of those things. So the answer is, how do you know? You look at successful people that have been there, done that. They all spend most of their time in box number 2. The really successful people in the world all spend in their box in number 2. They're always looking 5, 10, 20 years in the future. And they're not frantically running around from one crisis to the next. And the reason is they made the decision to prioritize that. And now all this other stuff just sort of fades away. Now they have a team that can take care of some of that stuff. There are systems that they put in place. But if you feel like I just can't afford to go to box number 2, you absolutely must go to box number 2 or you'll never get out of the rat race.
So here's my question for a person that we're actually talking to, an entrepreneur friend of ours, someone who's stumbled upon this idea, who's maybe like us heard of it, but has a hard time living that out day to day. maybe their personality is just, they don't know how to get this done and how to even move toward box number 2. Can you think of 1 or 2 ways that they might say, hey, if you do this, this will help you.
Yeah.
Or if you hire this type of person, then they'll help you get there.
Yeah.
I really feel that some folks don't have any practice.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't even know how to.
Very true. Very true. And I would say that was me a decade ago, right? I didn't have any practice, and this stuff doesn't come naturally, and they don't teach it in school, right?
Right. That's what I'm trying to do. The theory's great, but like, how do you do this?
All of us are wired like to respond to crises and to immediately escalate that, right? You see a bear charging toward you, or as Will asked
a dog, right? From our producer.
Charging toward me. And immediately that's your top priority.
Right.
The problem is most of the things that present themselves as urgent actually are not dogs that are about to tear you limb from limb.
Okay.
And they actually aren't. Somebody calls you, somebody emails you and has a question, and it feels like, oh my goodness, they're going to be upset if I don't answer this email, like, within 12 hours. Probably it's nothing too bad is going to happen. If you got your head down in a strategic planning event, your email can probably wait a day or two. Right.
So I feel the anxiety from some folks. And of course, we've all been in crisis management mode where we felt like I'll get to that one day. But the next week, I probably should go ahead and answer everything.
So there are two possible, to answer your question, what are some practical tips? How do you get started? There are 2 possible ways to get started. One is to eliminate boxes, especially the unimportant things, right? Boxes 3 and 4. Okay. So let's start with number 4. 4 is really, we're just wasting time in number 4.
Okay.
For the most part. So this is stuff that is not important.
This is Facebook.
It's Facebook. It's anything that we do to procrastinate. It's binge watching
talking
TV
to
shows.
People in the office, but not getting anything done.
Absolutely.
Management by walking around.
Well, management by walking around,
which is my style, but I can take it too far. I just know that, right?
So I'll tell you a story. Long ago in a past life, I did IT at a real estate company. One of my businesses did IT in high school. I learned how to fix computers, and I made money. I paid my way through grad school partially by working on people's computers. And I had this contract with a real estate company. There were like 170 agents in this company that were all selling houses in Greenville, South Carolina. And so I got to be a fly on the wall in their offices because every Tuesday afternoon for like 3 or 4 hours, I'd go in and there'd be a list. Go see Bob and fix his printer, and then go see Sue.
So this is you physically going around.
This was a long time ago.
This is a lot of people,
I was fixing computers. And I was like their outsourced IT department.
Okay.
And all these agents would put their name on a list, and I would go fix their computer problems. Okay. So it was fun for me. It was lucrative, and I learned a lot by observing all these people.
Okay.
And here's what I noticed.
Right.
Most of these 170 agents hung out they had this beautiful like lounge area, leather couches, TVs on the wall.
Okay.
They drank coffee. They talked to each other. They were constantly complaining about how awful the market was. This was a long time ago. The market's really good right now. And about how they had terrible buyers. And they would gossip and complain and talk about other realtors. And I'm like, don't you people ever work?
Right.
Well,
and being a realtor, aren't you unemployed unless you're actually signing papers? Yeah.
There were a few agents that always had their doors closed. They were never out there. They were always on the phone or on their computer. Well, the cool thing about it was that I worked for the executive management also, and I solved their problems. And I had access to all kinds of computer systems, and I'm fixing a report that's not working for them.
Yeah, so you can see the numbers.
I knew the numbers.
Right.
Well, this is no surprise.
Yeah.
Those people that are out there talking and drinking coffee all day long sold like 3 houses in a year.
Right.
I mean, they were making less than minimum wage.
They're having a good time. Leather couches, Tim. Leave them alone for a second. Right.
The guys who were with their doors closed and were on the phone all the time working were killing it. I mean, they were making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year as a realtor. That was really interesting to me. Like they're both realtors. They both work for, they're 1099.
Yeah, same company, right. Same
they both
resources.
had access to the same training,
same tools,
same resources, same
right.
tools. But some of them are, and the ones that aren't, were out there complaining and talking and drinking coffee.
So that, of course, is another testament of something we all know. Go to work and work. Right?
And work.
Yeah, get the work done, whatever the work is.
Yeah. Lots of things that we do that aren't urgent, that aren't important. Gossip, talking to people, binge watching TV, playing video games. Not that you should never have downtime. I'm all for structured, intentional downtime, but don't just avoid the work, right?
Yeah.
There are other things too. I'm not guilty of this. I don't think you are either. But some of us are like OC about these really elaborate filing systems and color coding everything and labeling stuff. And like we spend a lot of time on that, and it's actually not very important and not very urgent. So you need to stop doing it.
The person who sharpens their axe but never swings it.
Yeah.
Right? Everything looks good, but they never can get started. There's one more task to make sure it's in order.
So box number 4, you just got to dump. You got to stop doing that stuff, right? That's going to automatically free up time for number 2. Okay. So you ask, how do I do this? One way is to get rid of box number 4. Just stop doing it.
And it's probably amazing for you or me to sometimes assess our situation. Of course, everyone out there, how often we're spending time in those areas.
Yeah.
It's probably not earth-shattering for us to realize that. But once we realize that personally, I'm spending more time than I need just on unimportant trash.
Yeah, it's worth it to track your time. We're going to encourage you to do that at the end of this podcast to give you a practical exercise that maybe will turn on the light for you. But so you can eliminate box number 4. Also, you can eliminate box number 3 by delegating it. So box number 3 is urgent, but not necessarily important. If you get rid of those 2 boxes, you'll have more time to do 2. Here's the problem. It's really hard to get rid of those things if you're not in the habit. And so the other way, I told you there were 2 ways to solve this problem. The other way is just to prioritize number 2, sort of, what is it? The Parkinson's law, that the work expands to fill the amount of time allocated to it, right? And so if you're not careful, you might eliminate box number 4, but box number 3 grows to take its place, or box number 1 even grows to take its place.
Right.
And so maybe you just need to block off box number 2 and say, I'm going to go for 2 days to the mountains to do the strategic planning with my executive team. And we're going to figure out how to get the work, and we're going to fit the work around it. But this time is sacred. It's not just strategic planning that belongs in box number 2, but whatever it is, depending on your personality and how disciplined you are, maybe I can get rid of stuff first and then do the priority 2 stuff, the quadrant 2 stuff. Maybe I just need to force the quadrant 2 stuff and figure out how to fit in all the other things. Either of those approaches can work.
Right.
But somehow, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to spend more time in quadrant 2. That's what unlocks the real value for the rest of your life.
Got it. So I think we've really helped folks understand quadrant 2 is where a high level growing executive type personality wants to be. But still, I think sometimes if you're looking at these boxes 1, 2, 3, 4, or even looking at the matrix visually, and folks are trying to put this important and urgent might be the one we don't realize we shouldn't be in as much.
Yeah.
But we are thinking, no, this is the one, right?
Yeah.
Important and urgent.
Yeah.
So what would you, because I think when I was refreshing myself on, the Eisenhower Matrix, I was like, 1 is where I'm supposed to be, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So 1, important and urgent. Lots of stuff that is in there only because you haven't spent enough time in box number 2.
Gotcha.
Right? So box number 1 is largely reactionary. Box number 2 is largely proactive.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So if I'm reactive in box number 1, I've got to get the website back up because it crashed. Well, maybe I could have put in better monitoring, or I could have put that bill on auto pay, or I could have hired somebody to set up a backup server, or when there wasn't a crisis, I probably could have taken steps to make sure that the website didn't go down in the first place. And that would have been better for everybody. So yeah, once it happens, I've got to get the website back up, and that's priority numero uno.
Right.
But number 2 is where the real long-term value lies.
Do you think that the average person out there like yourself, who, let's say you're practicing as well as you're preaching today, which I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, I'm always a better preacher than practicer.
That's why you have a podcast, right? Real people are working right now, and we're talking. Okay, so my question is, how much time do you think in a work week, if you're working 40 hours, how much time does it take overtime once you become good at this? Are you spending in 2? Like, once you get it all set up, you only have to spend an hour a day, an hour a week, an hour a month, 5 hours, into what type of time proportion, if you're going to schedule it, we've got time allotted in there. So I'm wondering,
that's a great question. I love it. I would say that almost everything in box 3 has been delegated now. I do almost nothing that isn't important for me to be doing, right? It's something that I have to do. So I don't do accounting. I don't do scheduling. I don't do most email communication. I don't do logistics. I don't do research. I don't make my own PowerPoints or build my own websites or all that stuff has been, it's all stuff that needs to be done, but it's not important for me to do. So I've delegated or eliminated or automated most of that stuff in the bottom row.
Okay.
Box number 1, the crisis stuff, the urgent stuff. I have not done this analysis recently, like on paper, and actually thought it through, but I would say I probably spend 3 to 5 hours a week in box number 1, where it's urgent. Yeah. It's got to be done now.
Right.
The bulk of my time is in
really?
in quadrant 2. And that was not true even as recently as 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, right. Well, I was just assuming that, and maybe very much incorrectly, and of course it depends on certain people's scope of work and how they work with their team, but I'm really wondering, and of course we're talking about exit 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can hear us talking about that as you've learned that with I think Roland Frazier.
Yeah, right.
Those. But I just assumed that over time I wouldn't need to spend as much time in 2.
Yeah. In my opinion, number 2 is where all the real long-term value is.
So stick with it and stay there.
If you've properly prioritized number 2, there won't be very much urgent stuff. I don't like urgency because it's stress.
Of course.
Right? If my website's down, that's not a good thing. If I feel under pressure, I've got to get this thing out the door because I'm late or whatever, that's not a good thing. So I want to spend my time proactively in box number 2, getting all the systems in place and pre-planning, project management. Not that I'm going to do the project management, but I want to make sure that my team is clear about the vision and the goals and the objectives, and they're going to figure out how to get there. But if I plan right, and I prepare and I fix and I like, okay, we had that crisis. Now we're going to figure out how we never have that crisis again.
Right.
All that's quadrant 2 activity. If I do that right, there's just not going to be very many crises.
Okay. Ain't that something? All right, Tim. So now take us home. What can our listener do practically to get started on this? Let's say that they are delinquent in what they already know, or they've never done this exercise. How do we get going?
All right. So we talked about eliminating box number 4, delegate box number 3, right? Box number 3 is going to be different for different people. Maybe it's social media, responding to comments. You need to be responsive to social media, but it's usually not very important.
Right.
It's not something that you need to do. Responding to emails or phone calls. Somebody else can answer your phone. Somebody else can, you can reroute it. Somebody else can manage your email for you. Somebody else can schedule your travel arrangements. Somebody else can handle project management or planning for an event or even preparing a room for a meeting, right? We've talked before about customer experience, delighting your customers. You want to have chilled water bottles and printed agendas and the TV screen turned up and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. That's urgent, but it's not important, right? It's not a good use of your time. So you can delegate all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Then box number 1 and 2, we talked about how the interplay, as you spend more time in 2, there's less time required in number 1. But most of our time, if we're not intentional about that, goes into box number 1, the urgent and the important, or the other urgent, the urgent but unimportant. And so we've got to deal with box number 2, actually scheduling and prioritizing that time. So here are 4 Ds. You asked me to bring it home. Here are 4 Ds. Maybe I'll help with that. Box number 4. You dump it.
Dump it. Got it.
Not urgent, not important. Dump it. Box number 3, that's urgent but not important. Delegate it.
Yep.
If we go up now to box number 1 is urgent and important. Do it.
Do it.
You've got to do it.
Yeah.
You probably can't delegate it. Maybe you can. But if it's really actually important, you probably have to be involved in it. And then box number 2, the one that we really hang out, is decide and plan, right? Decide when you're going to do it, who's going to do it. It may not be you, but you're probably going to have to lead it. If it's really important, you should at least assign it and take ownership of it, even though somebody else may be involved in it. We talked before about who, not how.
Right.
Big believer in having lots of who's that get stuff done. I don't need to know how to do everything if I have some good who's. So anyway, decide when and how and who's going to do it and commit to that. Actually put it on your calendar, prioritize it, protect it. And as you do that, you're going to find fewer and fewer things that are urgent.
Love to hear it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what you've got to do. You've got to decide. That's where it all starts, right, Tim?
So how do we do that? As a takeaway? Here's my advice to you. Take your day, your week, maybe even your month. Take out a big piece of paper, draw 4 boxes, right? Put a cross down the middle, number your quadrants, urgent, important on top, or unimportant on the bottom, urgent and not urgent. You got it.
Look it up, just in case you're confused. Yes.
Eisenhower Matrix. So, and then write down all of the tasks that you're going to do today or this week and assign them to the appropriate quadrant. Is this important? Is it urgent? Which of these 4 boxes? And you'll probably be surprised to find out how many things you're probably bottom heavy.
Yeah.
You're doing lots of stuff that just really aren't that important.
Yeah.
And then figure out, can I eliminate it? Just cross it out. Can I delegate it? Like circle it, put somebody's initial next to it, figure out a way to delegate it. Do I really have to do this right away? Well, then go ahead and just do it. But the brilliance is, how can I protect time for this quadrant number 2? So actually write down your tasks, figure that out, and be intentional about protecting number 2. Over time, all the rest will sort of naturally fade away.
There's your marching orders from General Eisenhower and Lieutenant Tim over here. So I love it, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to decide to get to box number 2 when it comes to the Eisenhower Matrix, and that's how you're going to grow and profit and, of course, eliminate stress. I really like that. We didn't stress on that part, but he said that, and I think you know what to do. So we look forward to having a conversation with you very soon. Maybe Tim can help you with this process yourself. You know how to find Tim and us here at the Grow with Tim podcast. Subscribe, like, and share.